Murmai ki, Bhakti Devi ki, Tulasi Maharani ki, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki. Jai Nitai Go Premanandi. All glories to somebodies, all glories to somebodies, all glories to somebodies, all glories to the feet, Sri Guru, Sri Guru, all glories to the Prabhupada ki. Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sri Prasad Uvacha. Ma. What's it supposed to? Huh? Oh, okay. Mam Pralobya. Hang on. Let's see if I can get this one right. Pralobya Patya. Mamang Pralobayat Patya. Mamang Pralobayat Patya. Saktung Kameshu Tai Varai. Shaktam Kameshu Tai Varai. Shaktam Kameshu Tai Varai. Namam Pralobayat Patya. Shaktam Kameshu Tai Varai. Tat Sangha Bito Nivino. Tat Sangro Bito Nivino. Tat Sangha Bito Nivino. Shri Prahada Uvacha. Prahlad Maharaj said to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ma, please do not, Mam, me, Pralobhaya, Lua, Utpatya, because of my birth in the demoniac family. Satam, Sameshu, in the material environment. By all those. By Therefore, kindly do not conditions, and I desire to be liberated from your life. For this reason, I am taking shelter. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality, because I was born in an atheistic family, naturally attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, kindly do not tempt me with these illusions. I am very much afraid of material conditions, and I desire to be liberated from materialistic life. It is for this reason that I have taken shelter of your lotus feet. So a few interesting points here. One is that Prahlad Maharaj is saying, because I was born in an atheistic family. So there's two aspects to this. One is that due to association, one takes on qualities. So if we associate with people in the mode of ignorance, we will take on those qualities. If we associate with people in the mode of goodness, we'll take on those qualities. And of course, if we associate with transcendentalists, we'll also become a transcendentalist. Prabhupada would often give different examples. He talks about stockbroker societies and doctors' societies, and so people, they associate with people of like nature. Birds of a feather, they flock together, because in that association they develop all the qualities they desire. And you'll see, people who are attached to intoxication, what do? They go to the pub. They associate with people of that nature. People who like football, they associate with people something you've probably experienced quite a lot here. Yeah? People who like that kind of that lifestyle, that nature, they associate with people like that, so they can become more and more like that. So he's saying that because of my birth, I naturally have these qualities. But we also understand that Prahlad Maharaj is not an ordinary personality, he's a liberated person. So, being a liberated person, naturally he's not affected by such external factors. He's actually a great transcendentalist. Therefore, rather than, and we see this is explained by Nrismha later on in this chapter, rather than him becoming contaminated by such association, by him giving his association, or by him being born in such a family, 21 generations in the past, 21 generations in the future become liberated by his association, because he's so powerful. And there's a description in the 11th canto, I think it's chapter 25 or 6, I can't remember which chapter it is. It talks about different types of items and their purity. And it gives the analogy of like when something impure comes into contact with something that is pure, which is much, much greater in size, then the larger thing does not become contaminated, but the smaller thing becomes purified. Just like, for instance, to give a gross example, if you were to urinate in a well, would you then drink the water in a well? No, because the water's become contaminated. But if you urinate in, like I was just in Chicago, and the lake north of Chicago is called Lake Michigan, and I think it's the third biggest lake in the world. It's gigantic. It's like you're standing on the shore of the sea. You cannot see the other bank. It's so big. So if one were to urinate in, of course we don't urinate on bodies of water. It's considered to be very low class. But if one were to urinate in a lake the size of Lake Michigan, would the water become contaminated? No, because it's the vastness of its size. So in the same way with someone like Prahlad Maharaj, because he's such an advanced devotee, the association of someone like Hiranyakashipu or the family cannot affect him. And he's not affected by these things. Even though he's born in a family where material opulence is the focus. Material opulence, material enjoyment, this is the focus of the family. Still, he's not affected by that. Yet we see when people are born in these different circumstances, because of their lack of spiritual development, they're very much affected by these things. But Prahlad Maharaj is not affected. You see, like most people, the family they're born in very much shapes them. Whereas Prahlad Maharaj is the opposite for him. He's not shaped by the family at all. He's actually influencing the family by helping them become purified. And the other thing I find very interesting is he says, "Kindly do not tempt me with these illusions." So it's obviously he's understanding what it is. He's understanding this is just like some will-o'-the-wisp material benediction. I mean, what use is it to me? But out of his humility, he's not saying, "Oh, I'm a great devotee, therefore I can't be affected by these things," which is the fact. He can't be affected by it because he's such a great devotee. But out of his humility, he's saying, "Please don't tempt me with these illusions." He's very clearly explaining to the Lord that, for him this is insignificant. He's not interested in this. Yet we see in the subsequent verses, he mentions, I think it might be the next verse, the one after that, "You have sent me to this material world to exhibit the symptoms of pure devotee." So he's understanding his quality, he's understanding his nature, he's understanding why the Lord sent him here, to exhibit these different symptoms. I'll read Srila Prabhupada's purport. Materialistic life means attachment to the body and everything in relation to the body. This attachment is based on lusty desires for sense gratification, specifically sexual enjoyment. Kamastesta hita jnana. When one is too attached to material enjoyment, he's bereft of all knowledge. Hita jnana, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Those who are attached to material enjoyment are mostly inclined to worship the demigods, to procure various material opulences. They are especially attached to worship of the goddess Durga and Lord Shiva, because this transcendental couple can offer their devotees all material opulence. It's nice how Prabhupada's identified Shiva and Durga as a transcendental couple. So even though they can offer benedictions, they're not influenced by these benedictions. Lord Shiva, as we understand, he's often referred to as Vaishnava Namyata Shambhu. He's the greatest of all Vaishnavas. And in some places that Prabhupada explains that Lord Shiva is almost on the same level as Krishna. He's not Krishna, but he's close. And in the Brahma Samhita, we see this verse, Shiramyata Didivikara Vishesha Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Prita Ashtaheta. Yasambhutam apiti Yasambhutam api Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham. Yeah, I forgot the last line. He's explaining that Shira, just as milk is transformed by the action of acids into yogurt. And yogurt's nothing but milk, but you can't make milk out of yogurt. Anyone ever tried to turn yogurt back into milk? Can't be done. Because once it's changed, it's changed. But it's nothing but milk. It's all it is milk, but you can't make milk out of it. In the same way, Lord Brahma was explaining that Shambhu is a transformation of Vishnu to perform the service of destroying the world. So, Shiva is a great transcendentalist. He's a great personality, but he's not Vishnu. But he's almost on a similar level as Vishnu. But as we see with Lord Shiva, Brahma is also often referred to as being on the same level as Vishnu. But as we see with Shiva, Brahma, these different great personalities, they are prone to forgetfulness. They are prone to be putting into illusion by the Supreme Lord. This can never happen to Krishna. He never forgets. And we see that Ajopi Sama Avyayatma Bhutanamishwara, Krishna explains to Arjuna in the 4th chapter of the Gita. Many, many births both you and I have taken together. Because every time Krishna appears, the Pandavas come with him. When he appears as Krishna, the Pandavas are there. He said, I remember all of them, but you don't. And this is the nature of a jiva, is the jiva is prone to forgetfulness, but Krishna's not. Even though for the sake of pastime, he may not manifest his awareness or understanding of a particular thing. Just like there's that nice story of when the Akasura demon manifests in Vrindavan. And it describes there how when all the cowherd boys, they walk into the mouth of Akasura, and Krishna sort of stands there for a moment as if he's stunned. And some people opine that this is because Krishna's bewildered by this. But actually, our acharyas, they give the understanding that Krishna's actually marveling at the workings of his material, of his different energies. Lila Shakti, Swarup Shakti, all these different energies, how they're making these wonderful arrangements for pastimes. So we see that even Krishna sometimes is a little bit, wow, that's pretty far out. But he's never bewildered. He can't become bewildered. That's the nature of God. God can never be bewildered. But the living entity, the jiva, because the jiva is atomic. Therefore, the jiva can easily become overcome by the effects of material nature, especially when we identify the material nature. Because this is what happens, is when we try to exploit, this is also described later on in the Gita, when we try to exploit the resources of material nature, we become overcome by false ego. We become bewildered by the material nature and think we're the doer of these different activities. We think we're the enjoyer. This is because we're trying to exploit. And so we see here Prahlad's praying, don't tempt me with these material conditions. I don't want to become bewildered by this. And of course, we know that Prahlad couldn't become bewildered by this because he's such a great Vaishnava. But also we see in the life of Prabhupada, there's one really wonderful example. Prabhupada was speaking to the devotees and saying how he can never be affected by Maya. So devotees naturally, they just accept that. And then later on the day, Prabhupada was, I think he was leaving, going to another on another destination, and he's offering prayers before the deities. And one of the devotees, they came up to Prabhupada and they asked, Srila Prabhupada, what were you praying for? And Prabhupada said, I was praying to the Lord, please don't let me ever fall down. So he's bewildered. It's like, but Prabhupada, this morning you were saying you can never fall down. Now you're praying to Krishna, don't let me fall down. And Prabhupada explained, yes, because I'm always praying to the Lord, never let me fall down, therefore I can never fall down. And this is what Prahlad's doing. He's taking shelter of Krishna in every circumstance. And we see, if we look back at the history of the past time, how every time Hiranyakashipu tried to do something nasty to him, what did he do? Did he fight back? Did he try to resist? No, he took shelter of Krishna in every circumstance. And therefore, he's always protected. And in the case of someone like Prahlad, not only was the spirit soul protected, but his body was also protected. But in our case, whether the body's protected or not doesn't really matter. As long as we're always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, then we'll never have any challenge. And Kunti prays like this. I don't know if I mentioned this verse yesterday, the day before yesterday. She prays Vipada Shantu Tasha Jagat Guru Bhavato Darshanam Shad Apunam Bhavadarshanam. That let the calamities come again and again, because when the calamities come, I think of you. When I think of you, I no longer fear repeated birth and death. So this is the nature of the devotee, is like an advanced devotee, is to always be absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, because they understand this is the only way they're protected in this material world. They understand that, if I try to take shelter of my own ability, if I try to take shelter of material nature, I'll become bewildered. I'll become conquered by the material nature. But when I take shelter of Krishna, then and only then am I safe. And this is what's being demonstrated here by Prahlad. He's saying to the Lord that, don't tempt me with all these different things. It's not what I want. Yeah. Prahlad Maharaj, however, was detached from all material enjoyment. He therefore took shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord Nrismha and not the feet of any demigod. And we see this is a case of so many people in this material world, is they're taking shelter of other persons, thinking that by taking shelter of these other personalities, they can deliver me, or they can provide me with what I want. But the point is, what is the value of taking shelter of someone who's also subject to birth, death, old age, and disease? It's not going to save you from birth, death, and old age and disease. A bound person cannot untie you. Why ask someone whose hands are also tied to untie you? They can't. Only someone who's freed can free you. It is to be understood that if one really wants to release from this material world the threefold miseries, and from Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, birth, death, old age, and disease, one must take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot get released from materialistic life. Atheistic men are very much attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, if they get some if they get some opportunity to achieve more and more material enjoyment, they take it. Prahlad Maharaj, however, was very careful in this regard. Although born of the materialistic father, because he was a devotee, he had no material desires. Anya abhilashana shunya. So this is the difference between a materialist and a devotee. A devotee may have so much opportunity for material facility. And sometimes we see, as mentioned in the previous purport, talked about, great devotees like Ambarish Maharaj and Yudhisthira Maharaj and all these different personalities, how they had so much material facility, but they didn't think to use it for their sense gratification. It's mentioning here, where is it? One. There we are. Yeah, like Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, Yudhisthira Maharaj, many devotees. You see, they had so much. Like Yudhisthira, he was the emperor of the world. How much opulence did he have? He had unlimited opulence, and it's described how when he did the Rajasuya Yaga, how there was so much wealth was brought to him from the different kings around the world, is it wouldn't fit into the treasury, so they just piled it up outside the city. Piles of gold and jewels and all this just piled up outside the city because they couldn't store it. And yet he only ever used that wealth for his service to the Lord. He never used it in his own satisfaction. And we can see in our own lives, we can look at, by the mercy of Krishna, we have so much facility. How do we use this facility? We can really understand where we are in devotional service by looking at how we engage with the material nature. Everything, there's different qualities. There's goodness, passion, ignorance, or so many different aspects of life in this material nature, and we can understand where we are in relation to these things by symptoms. If we desire only to use the material nature to serve Krishna, we can understand where our consciousness is. But if we see the material nature and sometimes we use for serving Krishna, sometimes we use for serving ourselves. Again, by these symptoms we can understand that our devotion is mixed. If we're only using material nature to serve Krishna, we understand our devotion is pure. And if we're only using the material nature to serve ourselves, we understand there's no bhakti there. It's just simply about sense gratification. So everything in this world is understood through symptoms. And by analyzing the way we interact with material nature, we can understand where we are in terms of our progress in devotional service. And so Prahlad Maharaj, he's showing very wonderfully how we must be very careful with the way we interact with material nature, how we try to utilize material nature. And even though his father had so much material facility, I was saying this the other day, he had so much material facility, he was aware of the pitfalls of material facility. And Prabhupada mentions that in one of the purports here, is how even though the devotee may have material opulence, we have to be very careful in our dealings with material opulence. Just like, to give an example, sometimes some advanced devotees, you'll see how they might have, male devotees may have attractive female disciples. And it's not uncommon that the disciple will approach the spiritual master and say, "Oh, Guru Maharaj, anything you want, just ask me, I'll do it." And this can be very tempting, especially if someone's allured by the modes of material nature. You get some beautiful young woman literally offering themselves to you for anything they like, for anything you like. Very dangerous. So Prahlad Maharaj is giving us a warning here. Be careful. Material nature is very, very, interacting with material nature in an intimate way is very, very risky. So it's always good to be mindful of the way the material nature acts, and also be mindful of the way the jiva, when the jiva comes into contact with material modes of nature, especially the mode of passion, how we become affected and how we can become deluded and ultimately come to the point of forgetting we're Krishna's eternal servant and thinking that we're lords and master of nature. And this is what Prahlad Maharaj is praying for. He's saying, no, I don't want this. Don't tempt me with these things. But ultimately we see Krishna says, no, I'm ordering you. You do what, take these benedictions from me. So reluctantly, and it's not even reluctant, he joyfully accepts because the Lord's ordering him. But this is the nature of the pure devotee. He won't interact with material nature unless he's required to for his service. And we see Prabhupada was a very wonderful example of that. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur appreciated about Prabhupada how he understood this principle of yukta vairagya. This is what we also need to understand, what yukta vairagya means. It means taking the material nature and using it only in Krishna's service, not for our own enjoyment. Problem is, because of countless lifetimes of conditioning in this material world, we see the material nature as a source of enjoyment. We see it as our way of finding satisfaction in this material world. But actually, this is illusory, because you'll never find satisfaction in material nature. The only way you'll find satisfaction, and this is the point that Prabhupada is making here at the end of the purport, the only way you'll find satisfaction is in relationship with Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So Prahlad Maharaj is giving us very, very nice instructions here. And it's important for us to take these instructions to heart and very, very carefully act in our dealings with material nature. Not just the dealings with material nature, but also desires. This Prahlad Maharaj, he's even expressing fear of the desires. So he wants freedom from these desires. He doesn't want to have these desires. And it's the same, I find the same myself. It's like, even though I may not be doing gross external acts, still there's all these weird desires keep coming up. And so, the prayer is the Lord, please liberate me from these desires. Please give me freedom from these desires. So my only desire is to serve you. My only desire is to serve the devotees. Because even the desires, if we have the desires, we start to contemplate these things from the desire. Even in dreams, if we start to contemplate these things, eventually it will lead to external manifestation of these desires. So Prahlad Maharaj here is also expressing he doesn't even want to have these types of desires. I'll finish there. Any questions or comments there? Yes, sir. Pretty simple. Is it for Krishna? Are you doing it for Krishna or not? And you got to be careful, because just like, can you give you an example? From my service. Sometimes you see devotees that cook for the deities. But they cook the things their friends like, so the friends will come and take the Mahaprasadam, they'll glorify them. Oh, you're such a wonderful cook. So who's that for? Is that for Krishna or is that for you? A bit mixed. You're cooking for Krishna, but ultimately you're looking for the fruits. Or, when you're cooking something and you're contemplating, wow, that's going to be nice, I'm really looking forward to eating that. And that's why in deity worship we need to train the mind to not contemplate enjoying these things. It's easy when you're Pujari, you're just offering a lamp or the incense. How are you going to be contemplating enjoying the lamp? Unless it's really cold or something, But when you're cooking, especially for those devotees who cook for the deities, you have to be very careful, especially when devotees are really good cooks, not to contemplate these things before they're offered to the Lord. And even that, once they're offered to the Lord, it's better to avoid this. Like sometimes in temples you'll find, like, a certain cook will cook a particular offering. Like in New Govardhan where I live, there's one cook. She does she's a really expert cook, Prabhupada disciple. She cooks they're the offerings, because the artis are 6:30, so the offerings at 6:10. So she cooks at 6:10. I think it's on Wednesday nights, and the amount of devotees that are lined up there to get that offering. So in a sense, they're already contemplating that offering before it's being offered to Krishna. They may not know what's being offered, but so we have to be careful not to develop this kind of idea of enjoying the Lord, but actually our real position is to serve the Lord, and this is how we actually enjoy. Because see, what happens is, because our nature is to be a servant, not the okay, we do have the enjoying tendency there. That's anandamoy vyasa. That's the nature of the jiva, is to seek pleasure. But the way we find our pleasure is through seva, not through enjoying. Krishna is the one. He's the only one. Ekare Ishvara Krishna Arasabhya Brita. He's the only one who actually enjoys like that. Everyone else enjoys by serving him. So if someone is really keen to enjoy this material world, serve Krishna, because that's the only way you'll actually enjoy. So it's easy enough. You just understand, am I doing this for Krishna, or is there some other motive? If there's some other motive, be careful, because this can lead to fall down. I'm not saying it will, but it can. So we always need to be looking at, what's our motive? What's our motive in this? And if it's for serving Krishna, fine. This will bring about emancipation. But if there's some mixture there, you have to be careful, because that mixture, it's like Prabhupada, he talks about the two parallel lines of the train track. Yeah. And we know that if there's some slight deviation with the track, and it keeps going on, deviating, you get down the track, the train will derail. So it's, we have to be very careful to, Prabhupada would sometimes use this analogy of the spiritual life is like a razor's edge. I remember when I was a child, you probably remember the same thing. There's, your father used to take you to the barbers, and they do the short back and sides, and they do around the neck with a cutthroat razor. They don't use them anymore, but and the idea is like, my dad used to shave with a cutthroat, and with those things, it's just an open blade. So if you're not careful, you can easily cut yourself very badly with a blade like that. So spiritual life can be like that. If we're not attentive to spot the offenses, if we're not attentive to spot deviations, then it can create great havoc for us. It's easy, but we have to be attentive. Anything else? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.